meeting is being recorded.
All right, there we go. There's their voice. All right, good evening, everybody. My name is Katie Greeley. I use she, her pronouns. I am the founder of Prevention Education Solutions, and PES is an organization that focuses on prevention around substance use, harm reduction, as well as education around sexuality and gender. And I'm very, very, very excited tonight to be doing the second year of the Pride series with Montgomery County. As you can see, we have 4 amazing panelists at the top of your screen tonight. This is a webinar format, right? So they will be the ones who you will see as an attendee. You will be able to submit questions and I will be monitoring that as that comes in. We have an hour, so we're going to get right into it because this is a topic that there's a lot to discuss. It is very timely. It is very of current events, and it's life-saving, and it's very near and dear to my heart, this work. I am not only an individual in long-term healthy recovery from alcohol and other drug addiction, not only a clinician, not only a prevention specialist, but I'm also a non-binary individual, right? Who has finally come into themselves many years after my recovery. And if I knew what I know now about myself, and maybe it was a different time back in 2003, 2004 when I was in high school, maybe my life would look a little bit different. Maybe my relationship to alcohol or other drugs would look a little different, right? But we don't have a time machine. But now we're doing the work, we're having these conversations, we're supporting individuals that are queer. And I'm gonna start off by real quickly, I wanna introduce our wonderful panel, then I'm gonna kind of talk about why this topic is so important before I hand it back over to them to answer some questions about being a parent and raising LGBTQIA children, young adults, and being supportive and loving. So if you don't mind, real quick, I would just like to introduce the panelists. The first panelist, I'm just going to go on my screen from left to right, are Bill and Pam Roberts. Bill and Pam, if you could please just introduce yourself, your name, your pronouns, and why you're here tonight.
Sure. You want me to go? So I'm Pam Roberts. My pronouns are she, her. I have a daughter who right now she is 34 and she identifies as queer.
Yeah. And I'm Bill Roberts, he, him. And I am also in recovery, and as our daughter is. And I think that has allowed us to be more open about all kinds of things. So glad to be here. Thanks.
And then next, thank you both so much for being here. You both were here last year and it was such amazing conversation. So thank you again for joining us this year. Next on my screen is someone who's very important in my life, and that is my mother, Kathy Greeley, and I'm really excited for her to be here and share her experience. So Mom, would you like to introduce yourself?
I sure would. Thanks, Katie. I'm Kathy Greeley. I'm Katie Greeley's mom. Very proud of that. I identify as she, her. I am also in recovery and currently work in the field.
You still there, Mom? Well, I think what she was about to say is, oh, there she goes. My mom is a peer recovery specialist working in the field, has raised one non-binary child and a queer daughter as well. So 2 out of the 3 that I know she's very proud of, and I'm sure she'll join us again when she comes back. Stephanie.
Hello, everybody. My name is Stephanie. My pronouns are she, her. I have 3 children. I have a non-binary 16-year-old who prefers the pronouns they, them. And I have identical twins, both born male. One continues to identify as male, the other identifies as female, so transgender. They're both 10 years old. That has been quite a journey. I'm so proud of all three of my children, and I'm really grateful to be on this panel tonight, because as much as I share, I learn.
All right, well, I can't thank you all enough for joining us, and I'm just going to take a moment before I come back to y'all and ask you some questions about your experience as parents to kind of set the stage for why these conversations are so important and the impact that being a queer LGBTQIA individual can have on your mental health, your physical health, and how it relates to substance use. And as support, as adults in their life, and myself included, I work with queer youth, how just one supportive, affirming adult can make a huge difference in a young LGBTQIA individual's life. So I'm going to share my screen and throw some slides up, and we'll get through this quickly, but I think it's just important to set kind of the stage. We can do this, there we go, wonderful. All right. All right, so first I would like to say, thank you so much, Montgomery County, for funding the Pride series. This tonight's presentation, as well as our second presentation, which I'll talk about later on the Pride series, is funded by Montgomery County Drug, Alcohol Prevention and Mental Wellness. So really appreciate the support and the willingness to allow us to give us the space and for Pride Month. So happy Pride Month, everybody. Real quickly, Prevention Education Solutions, how we talk about harm reduction, how we talk about prevention, right? Prevention is so hard to measure. It's the absence of a tragedy. So what we're going to do, and this relates to substance use, as well as gender and sexuality, as well as mental health, as well as many other issues that impact young people, right? Is tonight we're going to talk about some risks that this community face. We're going to talk about promoting protective factors, right? Adults that affirm these young individuals to help keep them healthy. And we're going to talk about reducing harm, right? And that's what prevention is all about, those three things. Okay, so LGBTQIA, right? And this is constantly changing, constantly evolving. It's LGBTQ2IA. I've heard LGBTQQ2IAA, which would stand for queer, questioning, two-spirited, asexual, and ally. It's the alphabet. It's ongoing. It's ever evolving. But basically, what I want to illustrate with this slide is that my experience from ages 18 to 28 as a lesbian woman are different than my experience as now 28 on as a non-binary adult. A gay man's experience is very different than a bisexual woman's experience. A Black trans woman's experience is very different than a white lesbian's experience, right? Although we are a queer community, every young person, every queer person has a different experience shaped on their identity, and there's a different way to affirm that, right? And a different set of experiences and things that they're going to have to navigate that as adults and that support them are going to have to be able to listen to and help them navigate, right? Being a gay man is very different than being a gay woman for many different reasons, right? As well as being trans or non-binary or gender expansive, right? So that's just something to keep in mind. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach. It's really, when we're supporting the young people in our life, listen to who they're telling you that they are, listen to their experience, and listen to how you can support them. I'm not going to read this slide, but I always have it up here. We need to talk about minority stress, which is the impact that being a minority, someone that is not in the majority group, right? How that can impact mental health and physical health, right? And for LGBTQIA people, we do see higher rates of mental health disparities, as well as substance use, which I'm going to talk about in a second, right? So I want to just make something really clear, right? And I will also make these slides available, and they will be posted up on the Montgomery County site, as well as this recording tonight, that people are not people are not depressed because they're gay. They're gay and they're depressed, right? People are not anxious because they're trans and they're anxious, right? So we don't want to pathologize someone's gender. We don't want to pathologize someone's sexuality. That's not how we approach supporting young people in this community. Okay. There we go. All right. So here's just some information on the mental health disparities themselves, right? And again, I'm going to read this very quickly so we can get to the conversation. LGBTQIA individuals are more than twice as likely as their heterosexual peers to have mental health disorders in their lifetime. LGBTQ, see, I even get tongue-tied, individuals are 2.5 times more likely to experience depression, anxiety, substance misuse compared to their heterosexual peers. And actually, one of the most vulnerable subpopulations in the queer community are bisexual women, and women who identify as lesbians, right? Which have, like, if their drug of choice would be labeled as, or the drug of abuse by lesbian women will be labeled as alcohol, right? Where we see high rates of alcohol abuse, but higher rates of stimulant use among gay men, right? So that goes back to that slide where I say diverse experiences, different types of care needed, a different approach for every identity and every individual, right? Just like you, if you are a clinician, right, or someone that supports young people, every young person is different, every queer person is also different. You know, I think about this a lot, and I talk often about the queer umbrella, and I got a piece of feedback recently that I talked too much about gender. And I went back and you know, trans and non-binary individuals, and I was thinking a lot about it. And I remember the social work ethics, you know, that I agreed to when I became a social worker, and that was to help lift up the most marginalized individuals and communities. And right now, trans people in the LGBTQIA community are the most marginalized individuals, right? And that is just a fact. I bring this up because I want to talk about the impact that the anti-transness that we've seen in the news is having on young people. Because I'm about to show you a slide that demonstrates that, and we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight. But 2021 was a record year for anti-trans legislation, and you can see I underlined was because 2022 has already blown 2021 out of the water. When you look at this just image on the right side, right, you look at 2015, what happened in 2015? The Supreme Court legalized gay marriage, right, which was where a lot of the anti-LGBT rhetoric legislation was geared at, right? Or LGB rather, I should say. After gay marriage is legalized by the Supreme Court federally, we see this complete shift right over to trans individuals. And that comes with bathroom laws, that comes with banning medical care, that comes with sports. And when I talked about earlier protective factors, feeling comfortable in your environment, when you have to go to the bathroom multiple times a day, playing sports, and medical care that can be life-saving are all protective factors for this community that's, you know, are being politicized. So there we go. Okay. So far in 2022, 240 anti-trans bills have been filed. So just again, why I focus a lot on gender is because this is the part of our community that needs our attention and support the most at this moment. All right. And so this is the slide that I was talking about. How has this news, right, impacted the LGBTQIA community? And again, I'm not going to read everything, but this is the breakdown. And like I said, the majority of it is negative, right? And this was even before 2022, where we've even seen an uptick in anti-trans legislation, bills, conversations, articles, right? All of that. Okay. So real quickly, what does affirmation look like? Well, I'm going to leave that to the parents that are on this panel tonight that I know I've worked with before, I've heard their input before, and have done a wonderful job raising the children and the young adults that they love in their life. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, and I'm going to open up the floor for anyone of y'all to kind of comment on anything you just saw. And when I say y'all, I mean panelists, right? Any thoughts that you have before we get into the questions that I have outlined for tonight, or anything you would like to add yourself?
Go ahead.
Well, again, my name's Bill. I think the risk of in society for kids who are LGBTQ are enormous. And when I was a kid, a friend of mine committed suicide. I didn't know why. I found out later it's because he was gay and did not know how to deal with it. And it always struck me as being odd. I mean, somebody who he was very accomplished, and he had a lot of friends, and it was very popular. And why would he do that? So when my daughter came out, and I guess there were a lot of signs that she threw out to us, we just didn't recognize it. But when she came out, it was very powerful for her. And I know it was a big relief. And she had had problems with drugs and alcohol prior to that. I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that she was dealing with how do I deal with being a lesbian. So it was an easy transition for us to love her absolutely, and to affirm that, not just to love her, but celebrate the fact that she came out and she was going to be the person she was meant to be. And it's been a great trip ever since.
In reference to the slides that you just showed, so Katie came out when she was how old is she? 20 years old, and she was in college. And then that was that's really when our journey started, believe it or not. So when you say we raised, an LGBT, we didn't raise, actually we assumed something. We assumed she was heterosexual. She was just going down this path. And then our journey started when she came out. And I feel good that she felt comfortable coming to us and sitting down and talking. We'll have a chance to talk more about that. But what was different for me, anyhow, was as we kind of went down this journey, there were events that were happening in the world, like when that the bar down in Florida, and that guy went in and shot, everybody, and in the gay bar, and then out in California things were happening, and for the first time in my life, I was scared for my daughter and angry, so angry, like. And that was, I've been scared and angry for a lot of other things, but this was a new kind of fear for me, because, it was so out of my control, and it was so, you never knew when it was coming or where it was coming from. So that for me, really started to change things, and from an advocacy standpoint, and, an understanding that was important to me, to learn as much as I could and to find ways to support and advocate at that level. I mean, I know we'll go back and talk about what our experience was like, but you had asked about the slides.
Yeah.
So
No.
it really speaks to what that's about. I'm way more open and aware of what's going on. And certainly my daughter has been really helpful in helping us understand that.
Yeah, I think, we're going to talk about the next question. This leads really nicely into, it's going to be, what has your experience been with raising your LGBTQ child, or, not raising, like you mentioned, thank you for that call out, or like, being with your LGBTQ child, right? But I think, what usually comes up in these conversations is fear, right? And you talked about a whole different fear, right, of the violence that we've seen against the community. I think, like, going back to the very basic fear that many parents experience is, how is this going to impact their life? I want them to have all of the things that, maybe that I've had access to in my life. Are they going to be discriminated against? Are they going, are they going to find someone to love, right? All of those fears that, and I'm not saying anyone felt that, but I think that's a common experience for many people, right? And also, I just want to acknowledge, Bill, what you said about SI, not even SI, like active suicide, right? Which we know, and I just wanted to real quickly touch on that, because that is such a risk for this community. And when I said earlier that this is a life-saving conversation, I meant that, right? Like, there are many times earlier in my career when I was working with just LGBTQIA individuals, and the parents weren't on board for whatever reason, and they don't get on board until they see the statistics. They see that, this population is so much higher attempts of suicide. And when we look again at the most vulnerable part of this population, the trans population, it's 40% of trans individuals have attempted, right? And so when I say life-saving, I really mean that. That's not just a, you know, kind of like a buzzword. It really can be. So thank you for that input. And I just want to, you know, again, reiterate how important this is that you all are here tonight and that we're talking about this. And it wasn't, you know, for many parents, you know, it's not just all of a sudden you figure it out, right? It can be a journey and it can be celebration, but it can be grief too, and that's okay, right? As long as we're working towards not just tolerance, but celebration, like y'all said. I think that's really important. So I want to put that on the table for Stephanie and my mom, right? What has your experience been with you know, raising and also having LGBTQ children or young adults? Whoever would like to go first. Mom, there you go.
Mom,
You're on mute.
can't hear you, darling.
Hello?
No, she needs to go off mute.
Yeah.
I'm not on mute.
Yeah.
And I see she's not on mute.
Yeah. It's okay. Let's see. Stephanie, how about you go first and then we'll figure out we can help. Kath.
Okay. Let's see. So my transgender child, male to female, it wasn't about statistics that it wasn't the statistics that brought us to the table. It was not a searching out here, it was a searching in here. Like, this is my kid, and I'm not going to fight my kid on who they feel like they are, because that's how it started in the very beginning. Like, wait a second, what does this mean? What sort of adjustments do we need to make? In the grocery store with little kids, they're running around with long hair, but I'm calling them Jack and Charlie, and like, just, it was so confusing. And just allowing her to be herself, and watching how happy she was to be supported and affirmed, and how that just changed her. I really appreciate the slide that said kids aren't anxious because they are transgender or because they are gay. It's because of the response that they sometimes get from the outside about that identification. My kid is happy as heck with who she is. You know, she is who she is, and she's solid in that, and she knows that. And the challenges for her are finding the words, standing her ground, not saying anything at all. Like, she's trying to navigate all this stuff that she has no idea how to do. And the thing I've come up most recently against is I'm asking myself, am I a closeted parent? Like, do I out myself in my community at my bus stop? Like, I had a mom that was asking too many questions about why was Charlie's name Charlie in the yearbook, but you call her Shiloh? Like, she would not get off the question. And I was so taken aback. I was like, she didn't like the name Charlie, so we gave her a choice of 5 and she picked Shiloh. You just let her change her name? What the heck? Like, she just kept coming. So that's been a journey too, trying to find our way. It's not anything that any of us have been given a book for, no instruction manual, but I appreciate what Bill said. I'm also in recovery and understanding that everybody has their own way and their own perspective, and we're human, and it's just about love and seeing and being available for. I don't know if any of that made any sort of sense or was on topic at all.
It absolutely was. And what struck me, Stephanie, was even as, like, because I feel this too, I thought peer pressure would be gone. when I was in my, like after high school, right? And now as an adult, and even as someone who's non-binary themselves, still trying to navigate things sometimes, right? That like, I'm like, oh, this is uncomfortable. Even like as a parent, right? The trying to navigate those types of situations, which queer kids have to navigate all the time. How difficult it is for you as a fully formed adult who's emotionally intelligent, who is a clinician, right? And then like, thinking about these kids and how what gets me emotional is, right, like how amazing they are that they can stand in their own and do that, right? Because it is who they are, right? And what I forget that young kids, like, the younger you are, the less that you've been exposed to, the less you question things, right? So when you tell someone like I was doing gender and sexuality work with young kiddos, and it was the easiest work I've ever done. And I thought to myself, you know what? I mean, yes, this work is still needed, but I don't really need to be doing this work with young kids. I need to be doing it with the adults, right? And the reason why parents oftentimes don't support their young kiddos is because they're scared of what other adults are going to think.
Yep. And especially in this environment where these laws are and these bills are bringing, like, it can be scary. It's a different kind of fear. Like if I out myself as a parent of a transgender kid and I live in this neighborhood and they know this is me and they see me flying my flag, which I do to support my children, am I going to be put down in some freaking notebook somewhere? Like, it's scary. It's scary, and it's a choice, and it needs to be a conscious choice and decision to stand up and say, I'm not moving.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're here.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Hey, Kathy, do you think you have sound? No sound. Not yet.
Yeah.
You know what? The only thing I can think of, Kathy, I'll jump in, but check your computer too. Your computer maybe, the sound maybe down on your computer, not just on Zoom. So those are the two. I'll jump in. When my daughter came back from college, it was summer break, and she said, "Let's have dinner, Mom." And so we went out to dinner, and I had little clues, I mean, she'd always dated boys. There was, it wasn't anything like that, but things like she was watching the L Word all the time and loving it and asking me if I'd seen it. I was like, no, I got to start watching this. And, I mean, maybe that was a clue. I don't know. But anyhow, when we sat down and she said, I just want you to know that I've figured out over the last couple of months that that I'm gay, that I'm lesbian, and I'm gonna, and I want to pursue that. And I remember just looking at her like, wow, because I just, that wasn't what I thought we were going to talk about at dinner time. And, my gut was just like you said, Katie, it was more like, what's this mean? What does this mean for her? What does this mean, for, her options, what her life is going to be like? And all of this is like spinning in my head, 100 miles an hour. And I'm trying not to have too pregnant of a pause, as I'm, talking to her. And I said, I told her, I'm surprised because I didn't see it. And I'm sorry for not seeing and understanding this, sooner. But I love you. I love you to death. And, as far as I'm concerned, whatever you want to do, I want to support you and I love you. And, and that's kind of how I went. But I will be honest with you, there was a grieving process because I wasn't educated on this at all. And I told her I wanted to be. I want to learn. I want to know. I want to understand. I will say it was easier for me only because we'd just gone through, my daughter had been in, rehabs and gotten sober and recovery. And so there was a lot of learning and understanding and kind of, internal or personal journey of thought and kind of how that impacted my life and how I either contributed, to it being positive or negative, going along the way. So, I understood that I'm not gay, but I also, I've been bullied before. I've been, in situations, so I could empathize.
Good.
But it was so important for me to let her know that I wanted to learn. And Kate talks about, inviting you in, inviting you to have the conversations. And so that's where she was fabulous. And that's how we kind of started. But I did kind of have to go through that grieving process of, I'm not going to have a daughter that walks down the aisle in a white dress. So I'm not going to, you know what I mean? I had to let go.
She walked
And
down in a really nice
really
suit.
awesome. So cool.
It was a
And,
good suit. I saw. Yeah.
Absolutely. And just those kinds of things. But I'll never forget one conversation. She told me this was a huge impact. It still gets me emotional, but I really had no idea that it was going to be such an impact. But I remember she lived in California at the time, and we were having our normal daughter, conversations. And I said to her, Kate, I had no idea, how important this was in your life, because I see you now, and I am seeing the woman that you were meant to be. You are amazing. And I was really celebrating. And I said, I'm so happy you are gay. I am so happy because you have turned into this unbelievable woman. And I'm so grateful for that. And so that was that part of that journey. That was the start.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, I have a granddaughter who is 11. And she is exploring her sexuality and her gender identity. So I get a chance, right?
To raise
to
that.
do this differently, right? And be so open. So we went to Pride last weekend. And so there are a lot of things we could talk about later about how that is different than, than it was with Kate.
I mean, hey, then we can go back to what's your experience with raising an LGBTQ questioning grandchild, right?
Right. That's right.
Amazing. Love that. I mean, and here, that's why I do this work. That's like what's so rewarding. I had a terrible experience in middle school, and I had my hair grown out long in high school, wore girls' clothes, like made sure I, prescribed to what feminine meant. I wasn't really good at it, but I tried my best. It's deeply uncomfortable. I went back to work in schools looking like I do now, so afraid of how the students were going to respond. And it is so different. And it was not the reward I was expecting. And I was doing substance use prevention work, but I was a visible queer person to these young kiddos. They were coming up to me, having conversations. They were open, right? Like how beautiful it is that they don't have to deny that part of themselves until they're independent their first 2 years of college, right? It's like the cliche to come out year 1 or year 2 of college because you're finally out of that environment and you can figure yourself out in a completely new environment. But now kids are starting to explore that, and that's beautiful, right? And they have supportive people in their lives that are allowing them to do that. And it's not pushing sexuality on them. Believe me, there's many things that is heterosexual when it comes to sexuality that are pushed on very, very young individuals. That's not what that is, right? It's really just saying like, you can be whoever you want, and not like you can be the president of the United States, but like, I will love you for whoever you are. And I love what you said about your daughter, right, who I know very well and who is an amazing woman, right? And many of my queer friends that I've gotten to watch over the years, like grow into themselves to be amazing people. But it's once they finally realize, accept, and sometimes they don't have the acceptance of their loved ones, but once they work through that and they learn to accept themselves for who they are, which can take time, they shine so bright and it's so beautiful. Kathy, Mom, I'm going to check back in with you because I know you're dying to say something to contribute to the conversation. You can also type in the chat if for whatever reason your microphone isn't working, if you wanted to add something. But maybe you can talk? No. You can also try logging out and logging back in and see if that helps. Yeah. All right, let's try that. All right, so moving on to the next question. Through your continued experience as raising children, grandchildren, living with your full-grown adult children who are queer, what do you feel are the most important steps to be an ally and advocate for your kids?
What? She's obviously pushing me to do this. I tell you what, I think I look at some parents who don't accept their child sexuality and the choices that they make and the people they want to hang with and everything else. And the problem is that it just seems so hypocritical. You know, they say they'll take a bullet for their child, they'll jump in front of a train for them, but they shun them if they're gay, lesbian. I mean, I just don't understand that, because I have too much fun with my daughter. And you know, she's no different. I don't see it like that. But we've been going to Pride for years. You know, we fly the flags. We are members of PFLAG. We support the Trevor Project. And we're open to working with parents of kids with drug and alcohol problems, but specifically with parents of kids who are either questioning, because most of them are younger, but it seems to be less of a problem around here than it probably is in Kansas or some other parts of the country. The kids that we have met from the high schools are so open to being who they are, and they don't seem to have I don't know. I guess they're just much more aware of what's going on. They talk about it. Certainly, it's a whole different experience than when I was growing up, where I saw some very mean and bad things happen to the gay men that were around me. So, how to be an ally? Just love them exactly how they are. And if you have a chance to support a group, especially the ones that I think support the anti-suicide measures that are going on, and vote. You know, I make sure I know what the stance is for every politician locally going into the voting booth, and if they are pro LGBTQ communities and not supportive of measures that you were talking about, which drives me nuts. You know, from a Christian perspective, it just doesn't seem to fit, you know, the acceptance. So I think that the world, though, is changing. I think it's changing for the better, not everywhere, not necessarily in politics, but I have great hopes for this generation coming up, and I'm going to support them with it. Yeah.
Excellent. So, okay, my thing is on. As far as being an ally, I feel like the way that I demonstrate that to my children is, especially my 16-year-old, her very best friend is transgender, female to male. She has parents who are not accepting. He is incredibly closeted at home, but at our house, we use his chosen name, his chosen pronouns. The twins, who are 10, have watched us work with him as he's figuring out his name. He picked this name and then he changed his mind and felt like this one felt better. So now we use that chosen name. So my youngest and my 16-year-old are watching us be an ally, and to create a safe space and a safe home for them to just be themselves. And as far as being an advocate, I feel like, again, it's about demonstration and demonstrating. My husband and I have gone to the elementary school and had conversations with the staff there about what are their policies, what do we need, how can we be helpful, can we talk to any of the other parents, does anybody have any questions? And so we went with that right away in the beginning so that we could help to carve a path for our kid in this public school. And also we've taught her to advocate for herself. They once put her dead name up on the bus because they had assigned seats, and they put that name up there, and she got on the bus and she said, "That is not my name. My name is Shiloh. And if you have a problem with it, you can go talk to the principal."
That's great.
And so I was so proud of her for that, and I only think that she was able to advocate for herself because we advocate for her. It starts at home, I think.
Yeah.
It really does.
Absolutely. Like, and again, when I thank you for that, Stephanie. I talk about, when I do substance use prevention, I talk about adult drinking behavior in front of younger kids, right?
Mhm.
It's not so much that adults can't drink, it's that young kiddos, and you would be surprised at how young they start picking up on these behaviors, are sponges for everything. So you model that, right? You model like that behavior for her, and she can do it for herself, because again, she's like, yeah, my mom and my dad do this all the time. Like, she's, like, of course I'm gonna do it, right? And that's just amazing. I love that. Kathy, are you able to?
Can anybody hear me?
We can hear you.
I apologize to everyone. I have no idea what happened. No idea.
It's
But I'm here now, and I do have something to say, and that is that my daughter helped me embrace this. Very much like Pam and Bill, I had no idea until Katie told me. It just never crossed my mind. I happen to have two children that are part of the LGBTQ community. Both my daughters are. And neither one did I have any idea. But when Katie told me, I'll never forget what she said. And again, I get choked up. I thought something was terribly wrong when she presented this to me. And I said, "Oh my God." I said, "What are you so upset about? What's happened? Are you okay?" And she told me, and my response was, "Oh my God, is that all this is?" That was my immediate response, because I thought she was going to give me such horrible news. And I said, she said, "Well, I was so scared that I was going to ruin your dreams for me."
Yeah.
And that's what she said to me. So when I finally understood what she was saying, that helped me in the grieving and the acceptance, because that's what it was. It was my dreams for her that had to change, because again, I wasn't gonna see her father walk her down the aisle on the way, dressed very similar to what you said, Pam and Bill. And so, but that sentence, I'll never forget that, because that was the exchange between her and I. And that always helped me, because she basically told me, "Mom, this is how you're going to do this. You just need to change your dreams for me." And my dreams, and I said to her, "Katie, my dreams for you are for you to be happy and healthy and productive and live a life that is wonderful. They're my dreams for you. How that looks, they may start to look different than what I visualized, but I didn't think this was going to be so difficult." The most difficult thing as a parent for me is, again, the fear for them, the fear of how people aren't going to accept them or treat them, or society in general, with the way the laws are being written and what's happening. That's the fear. It's not being accepted, and then getting angry that, how dare you make a judgment statement about that? You don't know my daughter. You don't know these people. You're just, where's this coming from? Where's this hatred and this,
Right.
where does this come from? It obviously comes from their ignorance of not understanding, but it's my child that you're affecting. So I always, also being in recovery, I always have been pretty much break my anonymity. I don't really care about that. I do it all the time. And the longer I was sober, the more I did it, I found that there was a reason that would happen, because I could be anywhere, and then 3 weeks later, I get a phone call and say, "Hi, remember I met you at such and such. my husband has a terrible drinking problem and I need someone to talk to. So
Mm.
there's no coincidences when I break my anonymity. And now I do it more also with the gay community, because as soon as that subject comes up, you are not going to say something derogatory to me about the gay community. So I am going to tell you as soon as that comes out of your mouth. Really, I have 2 gay children.
Mhm.
I have 2 children in the LGBTQ community.
Yeah.
So that conversation, if they're thinking negatively, please save that for someone else. I don't want to hear it. And if they do say anything negative, I am now saying, I have to take exception to this, because your thinking and what you've just verbalized makes the world a more dangerous place for my child.
Mhm.
So I really do take exception to what you've just said, or that conversation, because that is the hardest thing for me is to watch her when she was struggling with different things, as her change and her Katie specifically was evolving in her queer life. That was navigating it with her, trying to understand decisions she was making. That process, it was never a matter of not accepting her. It was a matter of trying to understand, how do I walk next to her now that she's chosen this path?
Mhm.
Not to tell her how to go or where to go, or because she had all the answers. I didn't. I was just there to be there for her and try and understand so I could walk next to her. So that's been my journey. It was never about the acceptance of her being part of the community, the gay community, whatever piece of that she was going to be. It was, how do I protect her from a lot of people that I don't feel the same way, aren't going to be open to her and how she lives her life. And I also agree about what you said about your Katie's and addiction. And we have so many similarities. And that is that once she finally accepted that and knew who she was and get her comfort level, this amazing, incredible woman who I always knew was there, the confidence and everything just rose out of her like a fountain. It was just incredible to watch. All the insecurities, the path she's chosen, her independence, that she stands in her light and stands in her truth, is I'm in awe of that.
Yeah.
It's courageous. Our children choose they stand, it's very courageous to do what they're doing. And so that's where I am with it. It was never about the acceptance. It was about letting her teach me how to change my visual of my dreams for her.
That's cool.
Thank you for
I
saying.
think also there are little things that you can do for advocacy too. As I said, it doesn't have to be, join these groups and, lobby. The little things that really count. For example, Kate has 2 older brothers, and one of the older brothers has started to date because he's divorced. And he has this interview criteria process. And the first thing on the list is, how do you feel about gay people? Because he said, that's just an end right there, right? If you are, have any problems with gay people, bye-bye, and he has shared that with Kate,
Yeah.
right? They're just these little things that, it's not a big thing because he's not a very kind of emotional kind of guy, but that truly let her know that he was absolutely 100%, behind her. And then with my granddaughter, she, I think at 10, she started telling me, I think I'm Pan. And I looked at her and I go, Pan, tell me about Pan. And then I started saying, how did you find out about this stuff? And, but being able to have these conversations and not make it scary, but as I said, invite me in. I want to know more. These little things, I think, are part of that process of being an ally and advocating.
Thank you for that, Pam. And think about it, right? Like Pan being like pansexual, which is the ability to fall in love with individuals regardless of their gender identity or sex assigned at birth, right? So just to fall in love with someone for who they are, that's such a beautiful thing, right? And instead of being, I think I want to tell a story real quick. I was in Washington State teaching at a school in Tacoma, teaching a 6th grade class, and I was talking about pansexuality. I was talking about pronouns, and there was a 6th grader in that classroom who is like burned into my brain because I adore them, who could teach the class better than I could, who was taking the conversation up to a 12th grade level, at least I thought, right? And basically giving amazing definitions for pansexual, right? Which is like what we just said, the ability to fall in love with individuals regardless of gender, regardless of sex. And they came up to after me after the class, and they said they hugged me. And I was, this is COVID time. So I'm like, oh, okay. Like, but like, they were so excited that we were having this conversation, right? And I said, how did you know all that? And they reached out their hand, right? And they said, they had one of those bracelets that you can make, and it said pansexual. And the other one had their pronouns on it and said they, them. And this kid was glowing, so smart, so bright, so happy, and just like is gonna, grow. And whether or not they identify as pansexual in 5 years doesn't really matter. They just feel supported in that moment, and they can explore that, and they can try that hat on and say, you know what, actually, I'm a cis person who falls in love with the opposite sex, right? And that's okay, right? We tell young people all the time to explore things, to take risks, but we can't let them do that with who they might fall in love with and who they might want to choose as a life partner, or how they want to express their gender identity. It's just, I think it's a beautiful new space that we're walking into, that people want to pathologize and put legislation out there that says don't say gay, when really like that's just, again, the reason why LGBTQIA individuals have higher rates of mental health disparities and substance use is not because they're trans, not because they're gay, it's because of transphobia and homophobia in our society, right? And what we talked about earlier with our fears around that, and your kids not being accepted, and the fears I have for my future children not being accepted for who their parent is, right? So it goes both ways.
Yeah. Katie, I just want to say thank you for what you just said, because what I heard was permission to change my mind. If I have the permission to change my mind, if I give that permission to my children, I am being their greatest ally in exploring who they are. And because we've also had the experience of, okay, you're this, then let's be this. I don't know if I'm like so open, lots of room.
Yeah.
Lots of room, lots of permission. I'm here with you regardless of your choice. I'm here to help. How can I be helpful?
Yeah.
How can I be supportive? What do you need? I don't know what I need. Let's find out what you need.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. That's our conversation too. We're going to just be fluid, as they say, but we're going to be open. We're going to, this is, and the fact that she feels comfortable talking about it with Poppy, talking about, she's got an aunt, who's a great model. And that's one thing that I know we didn't do with Kate was role modeling, right? And what are some great role models when they were younger, growing up? And I know she's identified that as something that was missing in her life. And now there's some great ones out there.
Yeah.
And so, making sure that they're aware, and certainly she's got, an aunt and 2 aunts, right? Emily and Kate, who can be wonderful role models, but even, Wonder Woman and, all these wonderful things, people out there and that are helpful.
Yeah. And you don't need to be saying like, if you get a boyfriend or a girlfriend every time, right? If you say it just a couple of times and that kid is queer and exploring their sexuality, they're going to pick up on it, right?
Mhm.
Just like I picked up on everything that was anti-queer when I was younger, right? If I picked up on a pro-queer thing, I was attracted to it, right? And I didn't know why I was attracted to it. But if you say it, like, hey, you can fall in love with men, you can fall in women, you can, you can explore your gender. Like they don't, it doesn't need to be like so overt every single day, but just modeling that support, just, saying, hey, it's Pride Month. Like, hey, like, like there's a parade, like, here's some of the history. Hey, let's watch this movie about, I don't know, there's so much great media out there today that's representative of the LGBTQIA community. So that's huge for visibility and for young people, right? Because like Kate said, not too long ago, like 15 years ago, the L Word was the only show, which, where you saw visible, like, queer women like on TV. That was the only representation, right? There's many options now, which is great. So,
So just put in a quick word again for like being in recovery and how that relates. I remember when I came into the rooms and I found out that I was not the only one who was calling Texas at 2 a.m. and getting the phone bill and being, what the hell? Like, I wasn't the only person on the planet that was having that experience. I got to be in a room full of people who could identify with that. And so the thing about going to a parade and being surrounded, like there's a whole world of people out here, just to, you're not alone. You're not the only one. This is not some strange anomaly. This is a thing. It's a real thing. It's okay.
That's what we felt like the first time we went to Pride down in Philly. Yeah, our daughter was living in California, so we just went, there's just the two of us and sometimes with friends, but to see 20,000 kids being exactly who they want to be without any, fear of being out in the open about it was, it wasn't just, it was very emotional for us to be able to see that, it's a beautiful thing. And we had banners that said free mom hugs and free dad hugs. And people were running up and giving Pam, this guy, great big guy, came running up to Pam and asked if he could have a hug. And she said, my mom won't give me a hug, and those kinds of things really change you. I was lucky because I was exposed to homosexuality at a very young age. We'd go out to stay with my grandmother. She owned a lot of houses in California and she only rented to gay men. She was way ahead of her time. This is back in the 60s, 50s and 60s. And I could see how they had problems, but they were really fun people. I mean, they were really fun guys. And so when my experience when Kate came out to me, which was after coming out to Pam, was I was sitting on the couch here and she said, Dad, I got something very important I have to tell you. Can you turn off the TV and listen to me for a second? I said, sure. So I'm thinking she's pregnant, right? I'm thinking she's pregnant or she started using drugs again or something like that. I sit down and she says, I got to tell you, I'm coming out. I'm a lesbian and I like girls. And I just said, well, and that's one more thing we have in common, because I like girls too. And I think dealing with it on a upbeat way, because there's so much seriousness and sadness associated with it. If we can be not just accepting, but really happy about it, I think that it makes a difference. And, you other parents here, Kathy and Stephanie, I mean, you have modeled the right things for your kids, I believe. And I think that, and when you do stick up with them, Mama Grizz or whatever it is, when you stick up for your kids like that, it sends a message that you love them and you care about them and it's okay. And that's the rest of the world sees that. So I really get a lot out of talking with other parents that have gone through this and are going through it or whatever, because it just helps to reinforce me and towards my feelings of joy for who I have as a daughter.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for sharing that, Bill and Stephanie and Kathy, Mom, your contribution as well. I know we're at 8 o'clock, but I couldn't have had a more loving and accepting panel. And I just want to, if we can quickly kind of just acknowledge that there are parents that are really struggling to figure this out, right? And if you have a couple words of advice for them, right? What would you want to say to those parents that, their kids might be questioning their sexuality, those kids might be questioning their gender? What would you want to leave them with tonight? If you want to share anything.
I think one of the things that could be helpful, I'm sure I've got 10 more behind it, but the first thing that comes to mind for me is that my adult feelings about what I was receiving from my child were none of my child's business unless it was joy and love and acceptance. If I have issues about what I'm seeing, I go to my support systems and I talk it through and I figure it out and I get more information because of those micro little tiny things that they are picking up on. I don't want to do that. Don't do that. Go talk to your friends.
Couldn't
You know
agree
what I
more as a clinician. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Don't talk to a confused 16-year-old or 10-year-old about your confused feelings.
Right.
You're the grown-up, be the grown-up, do your research. I don't mean to be cruel or harsh with that, but I wish somebody had said that to me. Like I've said a couple of really dumb things that I regret and can't take back. I feel like I've made up for, but if that's one thing I could change, it would be that.
Thank you for that.
And I think there's, you know, that word, take a deep breath, pause, you know, because this is a bit of a roller coaster. There is fear involved. Whenever there's fear involved, there's not a whole lot of rational thinking going on either. And that we all know that, we've all experienced this, we've been in your shoes. And so just know that, you know, this is something where, you know, you're going to bumble along a little bit, and that's okay. And just be kind to yourself. And I'm with you too, Stephanie. The face that we present to our kids is one of love and acceptance, however that works for you. And I think it's okay, depending on the age too. You know, obviously if they're really young versus they're in high school or college, is that, you know, I hear you, I love you, and I'm going to take some time to really absorb this because I need to understand how to support you. That's okay to let that know, and then take that time. And as to Stephanie's point, you know, go get the support and help that you need. And I've talked with people, and, you know, for religious reasons or whatever, that's a hump that they have to get through because of the, you know, their religion and how that impacts their lives. And so, you know, and I know that's a process that they have to deal with, right? But, you know, in the end, you know, it's your child, and do you want them a part of your life?
Yep.
And that really is what it comes down to. So that, I don't know if that's helpful, but.
Absolutely.
Lose the anger, lose the guilt, and find help. Talk to other people. Stephanie hit it absolutely perfectly, whether they be peers who have been down the road or professionals. Get the help.
And you didn't do anything wrong. You didn't screw anything up. It's not anybody's fault.
Kathy.
Ditch that.
And I would just say, you know, ask yourself the question. This might be unknown territory, but, you know, we always say we love our children unconditionally, and this can really throw a wrench into the works for some people. And I totally agree. Go to someone who's been through this, find a parents group, go get professional help, but in no way, just do your best to make sure your child knows that you love them wholeheartedly, and you're going to do everything you can to understand and support them. Even if you don't at the moment, go somewhere else, figure that out, but always let them know that you love them and support them. And that, you know, nothing's going to take that away from them. Your love is never going to be taken away from them, because I think that's crucial.
Good.
Yeah. And you don't have to have all the answers right away. And if your kid, if you are trying, they will see that you're trying, right? They will see that you're trying, and they will remember that. So just know that.
Thank you for saying that to me.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Still trying. I've been through a lot. There's still probably a lot coming, and I'm gonna remain teachable is, I guess, the other thing I would say. Remain teachable.
Absolutely.
You're
And
right.
as someone who does this education, someone who is queer themselves, right, who came out as non-binary, like masculine non-binary, when I was really 30, like 28, 30, I was still figuring it out, right? I mess up sometimes. I misgender some people sometimes. And what's important is that I keep trying, and that I keep learning. And, you know, I'm struggling to keep up with Gen Z, right? So, you know, but keep trying. Don't ever say you're too old to learn someone's pronouns. Don't say I'm stuck in my ways. Just affirm someone for who they are, and they're gonna see that and they're gonna recognize that as love, right?
The next one is Gen Alpha. Those are the twins. And I just got a really quick tip for they, them. If any parent is out there struggling with a new they, them gets put out there, is to have in your mind that their favorite animal is in their pocket, like a little tiny version of they'll be down in a minute.
Mhm,
They said this.
mhm.
They think they would like to. It's helpful. It's helpful.
Yeah.
And I promise it's not like I struggled with it at first, but I have many friends who use they, them pronouns, and I've got it now, right? It's just you just
Yeah.
use it,
Practice.
and you mess up sometimes, you correct yourself, you move on, and you know, that's one of the many examples of how we can affirm, you know, the people in our lives that are queer.
Can I also just give a shout out to PFLAG?
Yes.
And you could explain who they are.
Okay.
I don't know if you have any links to PFLAG in Montgomery County. But I think I saw one in the chat box. They're a great organization.
Yes. So I am copying a link of Montgomery County LGBTQIA support into the chat box. I have also included a PDF of the Pride series, which we were going to have another session on June 28th from queer individuals that are going to share their recovery stories, why they started using alcohol or other drugs, and what their recovery experience is like. But yeah, there's tons of resources. The Saga Center in Montgomery County. Again, please check out that Montco LGBTQIA resources link in the chat. And you can always email me. I'm going to drop my email in the chat as well, katie@preventioned.org, if you're looking for any resources related to being a parent and supporting queer youth. We are 8 minutes over. The last thing I'm going to drop in the chat is a link to tonight's evaluation for the programming. If you have a moment, I would love if you can kind of give us feedback on what your experience was tonight, if you found this helpful, if you want more type of this programming for us. I really want to again thank our panelists so much for showing up tonight, sharing a piece of themselves, sharing a piece of their families with us. Thank you all. You're amazing parents, and you're doing good work by just, you know, affirming and loving your kids for who they are. So thank you.
Thank you, Katie, and thank you for always supporting me and accepting me and teaching me. I appreciate you for that.
Why, yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Thanks, Katie.
Thanks, Katie.
Thank
Thanks,
you
everyone.
all. Well,
Take care.
a reminder, this will be up on Montgomery County's website. You can always reach out to us. Have a wonderful night, everyone. Happy Pride Month. Take care of yourselves.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
See ya.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.